A rivalry born in rage. A friendship buried under decades of silence. And now, an unexpected confession. James Hetfield has just opened a door fans never thought he'd touch again, his complicated, emotional history with Dave Mustaine and Megadeth. We all know the headlines, fights, firings, and decades of bitterness, but what really happened behind the guitars, the fame, and the music? Why now? Why speak up at 61? And what does he truly think about the man who helped build Metallica, then turned into its fiercest rival? As Metallica prepares for their massive M72 World Tour continuation in 2026 and Megadeth gears up for their own summer dates, we dug through interviews, confessions, and lost chances to unpack this long-running feud, one that changed the course of heavy metal forever. Firestarter in the studio. In 1981, fate collided with ambition when four young musicians crossed paths, unaware they were about to redefine the very essence of metal. James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich, two driven kids from California with an insatiable hunger for sound, had just started molding what would become Metallica. But they needed someone to electrify their chemistry. That's when Dave Mustaine entered the picture. A lightning rod of raw talent and unchecked aggression, Mustaine wasn't just another guitarist. He was a storm in human form. From day one, Mustaine's influence on Metallica was impossible to ignore. His guitar work was jagged, sharp, and deeply emotional. It brought menace and edge to songs like The Four Horsemen and Jump in the Fire. Without Dave's relentless energy, those tracks might have lacked the searing force that helped ignite the thrash metal movement. But genius has its price. Mustaine's brilliance came wrapped in volatility. His drinking spiraled out of control. He picked fights, clashed with crew members, and disrupted rehearsals with unpredictable outbursts. One telling moment laid it bare. When Mustaine's dog damaged bassist Ron McGovney's car, tempers exploded. Hetfield confronted Mustaine, and in a drunken rage, Dave responded with violence. The punch he threw that night sealed his fate. Behind the scenes, Hetfield and Ulrich wrestled with a decision they never wanted to make. They needed Mustaine's fire, but they feared it would burn the whole project down. Just days before Metallica was set to enter the studio for Kill 'Em All, they fired him. They put Mustaine on a Greyhound bus back to Los Angeles. The impact was devastating. "It was the biggest betrayal of my life," Mustaine later said. "I helped start that band. I poured everything into it. And they tossed me out like garbage." Hetfield later acknowledged the guilt. "We were all wild back then," he said. "But Dave took it further than we could handle. We did what we had to do, but that doesn't mean it didn't hurt." In Hetfield's mind, it wasn't just a band decision, it was the loss of a brother. And yet, Mustaine didn't disappear. He transformed. From the ashes of rejection, he built Megadeth, a band crafted not just to succeed but to eclipse Metallica. Every riff he wrote, every lyric he screamed, was a declaration of war. Metallica had tried to silence him, but instead, they created a rival who would become their mirror, their shadow, and their fiercest challenger. Forged in fury. Dave Mustaine didn't walk away from Metallica. He was cast out, bruised in ego and spirit. And as the bus rolled back toward Los Angeles in 1983, Mustaine wasn't just staring out the window. He was planning revenge. In those long hours of isolation, a new mission took shape, not just to form another band, but to build something so powerful it would haunt the very people who had exiled him. That mission became Megadeth. This wasn't a clean slate. It was war. Everything Mustaine felt, betrayal, humiliation, anger, was funneled into his songwriting. In just 2 years, that fury erupted onto the world in the form of Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good. Released in 1985, it was chaotic, intense, and technically brutal. One track in particular, Mechanics, stood out. It was a reworked version of Metallica's The Four Horsemen, a song Mustaine had co-written. By rebranding it under his name and speeding it up, he was sending a message: this was mine all along. But Mustaine wasn't just shouting at Metallica. He was reshaping metal. Unlike Metallica, who by then were moving toward a broader audience, Megadeth doubled down on complexity. Intricate guitar work, whiplash tempo changes, aggressive vocals. Mustaine didn't want to be compared. He wanted to be crowned. In interview after interview, Mustaine poured gasoline on the fire. He called Metallica sellouts, mocked their lyrics, accused them of coasting on fame. Behind the scenes, Hetfield and Ulrich paid attention, even if they rarely admitted it. Hetfield later confessed, "We knew Dave was out there. We could feel it. And yeah, it made us work harder." But where Mustaine externalized his pain, Hetfield internalized his. His answer wasn't confrontation, it was elevation. By the late 80s, Megadeth had become a legitimate force. Albums like Peace sells, but who's buying? And Rust and Peace weren't just commercial successes, they were artistic statements. Mustaine had gone from exiled guitarist to visionary frontman. But that rise didn't bring peace. Because even as Megadeth climbed higher, the world still compared him to Metallica. And that comparison kept the rivalry burning. The quiet fuel behind Metallica. While Dave Mustaine screamed his frustrations into every mic, James Hetfield said almost nothing. At least, not out loud. He didn't throw verbal jabs in interviews. But behind the calm facade was a man grinding harder, writing deeper, and channeling every ounce of unspoken rivalry into Metallica's rise. In his silence, Hetfield found power. Mustaine's departure left a hole, but also created a space Hetfield could finally fill. With Kirk Hammett replacing Mustaine, Hetfield stepped up, not just as frontman, but as the emotional engine of the band. He carried the guilt of Mustaine's firing, the pressure of living up to their lost potential, and the hunger to prove Metallica had made the right choice. Ride the Lightning delivered in 1984. The riffs were sharper, the compositions tighter, the themes darker. Master of Puppets in 1986 was their declaration of dominance, widely regarded as one of the greatest metal albums of all time. Hetfield later admitted the competition never fully left his mind. "We knew Dave was always watching," he said. And in a weird way, that pushed us. Throughout the late 80s and early 90s, Metallica expanded their sound. They embraced melody. They wrote ballads like Fade to Black and Nothing Else Matters, and Justice for All showcased their musical ambitions, while the Black Album made them a global phenomenon. Mustaine called it selling out. But Hetfield wasn't chasing trends, he was chasing immortality. He didn't just want to be better than Mustaine. He wanted Metallica to be untouchable. By the early 2000s, both bands had become institutions. Yet something remained unresolved. That pain finally surfaced in 2004 with Some Kind of Monster, the documentary that captured a sit-down between Hetfield and Mustaine. For the first time since 1983, they were face to face. The footage is unforgettable. Mustaine appeared vulnerable. Gone was the bravado. In its place was a man still nursing wounds. He told Hetfield plainly, "You never even said thank you. It's like you just threw me away." Hetfield sat across from him, visibly uneasy, but listening. He explained, "At the time, we were just trying to survive." He admitted that letting Mustaine go wasn't personal. It was survival. But there was remorse in his tone. The conversation didn't end with hugs or forgiveness. But it shattered a barrier. Fans saw them not as rivals, but as damaged people trying to untangle decades of pain. Critics called it one of the most honest moments in any rock documentary. For the first time, the legendary feud wasn't reduced to headlines. It was raw. Messy. Human. In the years since, Hetfield began referencing Mustaine more openly, not with venom, but with recognition. And Mustaine, now 64 and having battled throat cancer, has also acknowledged Hetfield with more complexity. In a 2025 interview promoting Megadeth's continued touring, Mustaine said, "Time changes things. You realize we were all just kids." It wasn't reconciliation. But it was evolution. The project that died in a sentence. After Some Kind of Monster, fans hoped for healing. Then came a new possibility: what if the two metal giants actually worked together again? In interviews between 2020 and 2023, Mustaine began dropping hints. Behind the scenes, he and Hetfield reportedly talked about revisiting early Metallica material, tracks they had written together in the chaotic early days. But what started as a flicker of hope was extinguished just as quickly. In a 2023 interview with Guitar.com, Mustaine revealed why the project never materialized. The idea was moving forward until he brought up publishing rights. Mustaine felt he had never been properly credited for his contributions to certain early Metallica songs. According to Mustaine, Hetfield went silent. "Once I brought that up, it was over," Mustaine said. The project stopped there. Not because of ego, but because of deep, unresolved scar tissue surrounding who owned what after all these years. Hetfield later gave a measured reply: "I respect him. I respect what he's done. That's where we are right now." It wasn't a rebuttal, but it wasn't a bridge either. In early 2026, as both bands announced summer tour dates, Metallica continuing their M72 World Tour and Megadeth headlining their own run, the question resurfaced. Could they ever share a stage again? Mustaine told Metal Hammer in February 2026, "I'm not closing any doors. But I'm not holding my breath either." Hetfield has remained silent on the matter. When fans drew the battle lines. While Hetfield and Mustaine wrestled with their personal demons, their fans were waging a war of their own. Throughout the late 80s and 90s, fans divided themselves with fierce intensity. You were either with Metallica or with Megadeth, there was no in-between. Metallica had the visibility. Their sound was massive, their albums ubiquitous. With the Black Album, they reached heights no metal band had ever touched. But to a huge segment of the metal community, that success came with a price. Megadeth doubled down on technical ferocity. Albums like Rust in Peace were crafted to push the limits of speed and precision. Megadeth was the band that didn't sell out. The result? Fans formed tribes. The media feasted on it, framing every Mustaine interview as a shot fired. But by the 2000s, as metal evolved, the old animosities started to soften. New fans didn't inherit the bitterness. Festivals like the Big Four, where Metallica and Megadeth shared the same stage, allowed fans to experience unity rather than rivalry. Today, in 2026, the debate continues but with less venom. Younger listeners discovering thrash metal through streaming platforms often ask, why can't they just get along? It's a fair question. And it's one Hetfield himself seemed to address in a rare December 2025 interview with Rolling Stone. At 61, looking back on his life, his multiple rehab stints, his divorce, his renewed focus on sobriety, Hetfield offered his most candid take yet. What Hetfield said at 61. "I don't hate Dave," Hetfield said. "I never did. I hated the situation. I hated what we had to do. And I think for a long time, I hated myself for not being able to fix it." He paused. "We were kids with guitars and too much booze. That's not an excuse. But it's the truth." When asked about Megadeth's legacy, Hetfield surprised many. "Dave's a genius. He always was. That's why it hurts so much to let him go. You don't let go of genius lightly. But we couldn't survive together. We could barely survive apart." Hetfield also addressed the failed collaboration over publishing rights. "I'm not going to get into the details. But I'll say this, some conversations are harder than writing a song. Much harder." He acknowledged that at 61, he's learned to let go of things he once held tight. The rivalry? That's for the fans to debate. For me? I just want to play music and stay sober. Mustaine, for his part, responded to Hetfield's comments in a March 2026 interview. "I heard what he said. I believe him. But believing someone and trusting them are different things. We've got a long way to go." He smiled. "But at least we're walking." The collaboration that still haunts them. By now, the rivalry feels less like a personal grudge and more like a legend etched into heavy metal's DNA. The question still haunts fans: what if Metallica had never let Mustaine go? It's a what if loaded with possibilities. Mustaine has entertained those alternate realities for years. Hetfield has been more cautious. But even as olive branches were extended, something always seemed to pull them back apart. The tragedy isn't just that the collaboration never happened. It's that they were finally talking, really talking, and history still got in the way. Two bands. One broken bond. A legacy too powerful to ignore. Whether they ever play together again or never speak another word, their story is already written into heavy metal history. At 61, James Hetfield has finally opened up. And what he revealed isn't just about Dave Mustaine or Megadeth. It's about forgiveness, regret, and the long, slow work of becoming human. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want more untold stories from the world of music. And don't miss the next video, it's one Hetfield himself might want to see.